You ready, James?
I am.
Okay. All right, I've got 5 o'clock. I'll call the meeting to order today, Monday, March 7th, 2020. Roll call, we have Selectman Howdy Goodwin, Eric Eaton, Mackenzie Jewett, Kevin Buck, myself, Jamie Thurlow, Town Manager Jesse Dunbar, and Town Attorney James Collier. Adoption of agenda. Is there anything anyone would like to change on the agenda? All right, we have approval of the minutes from February 22nd.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of Tuesday, February 22nd, 2022.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from Tuesday, February 22nd, 2022. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? All right. Next we have warrants. We have warrant 84 for $2,509, 85 for $10,945.42, 86 for $1,761.30, 87 for $29,101.31, and 88 for $11,744.02.
Make a motion to approve warrants 84 through 88.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve warrants 84 through 88. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? All right, first, under regular business, we have Thurston's liquor license application to be renewed this year. Jesse, is there anything, I didn't see anything different from last year on that? No. Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the application of Thurston's Lobster Pound located at 9 Thurston Road for state on-premise restaurant liquor license.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the application for Thurston's Lobster Pound located at 9 Thurston Road for a state on-premises restaurant liquor license. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? All right. Next, we have the land use ordinance. Jesse, do you want to summarize this, or do you want to have, I see Mark's here, if Mark wants to.
If Mark wants to go first.
Mark, do you want to kind of give us a rundown or an explanation of your changes on the land use ordinance?
I can do that. Well, as you know, there was a moratorium that was enacted asking, and the voters approved having the town look at making changes to the campground standards. And since the planning board is the agency for the town that deals with this, we took it upon us to look at those standards. And we're proposing some amendments to go to the town meeting, the voters at town meeting. Essentially what we've done, can you hear me okay with the mask on?
Yeah, no, I can hear you fine. You guys can. Yep.
We looked at decided to increase the setback from 50 feet to 75 feet. We set a maximum number of camping units at 45. 10-acre minimum size. We went from 5,000 square feet to 10,000 square feet, which is a requirement for each campsite, the amount of land for each campsite. Required inspection and a permit to be issued, an annual inspection and a permit to be issued. Smokeless fire pits. These decisions were made after, I should say, after several public hearings and also through discussions with the AWL process. And smokeless fire pits, no RVs, although RVs would be allowed at the campgrounds that do have RV sites. As Harbor.
The current
campgrounds. Yes. Instead of a campground, we we're recommending a definition called recreational lodging facilities. And I think that's basically what's in response to what we see happening with campgrounds, that sort of thing, whereas at one time, you know, a campground was a bunch of tents set up. Now we see yurts, cabins, things like that. So we've got that. It's at fire pits. A facility manager must be on the premises 24 hours a day when the recreational lodging facility is in operation. And quiet hours of between 10 p.m. and 7 p.m. That should be 7 a.m. There's a typo in here. Should be enforced. I think what else? We made some changes at our last meeting, some minor changes. Brett, you can, glad to see you here. Help me out on this.
We have our,
We realized 75% setback in D4, 5D4, which was conforming with the minimum setback. It was just one said 50 and the other said 75. So we changed that to 75, so they both conform. Made a little change about inspections and permits. The way it was written wasn't right. It said if appropriate, changed the if approved or meet standards. I guess I do have the new thing here. Definition of campsites were brought in line with the new category of definition of recreational lodging unit. We found that that was lacking. And the other thing we added was if 2 or more recreational lodging facilities on abutting parcels are under uniform ownership or control, they would be considered one facility. So we were concerned that somebody might buy a large lot, split it in 2, and get around the 45 campsite limit by creating 2 abutting campgrounds under the same ownership. I think that about covers it.
okay, thank you, Mark.
Jesse, Mike?
Jesse?
Ideas.
I'll just add that the handout number 1 on your counter was the changes in purple were the town attorney, Mr. Collier, changed after the last public hearing from the planning board. You can look through it and see that most of them are just minor grammar and rephrasings and a couple things.
So basically, it's the same as what we got in
Yeah.
the thicker copy, just
Yeah,
with
it
some
just says-
corrections.
Yeah, it's just grammar, like camping, and I don't know if you see the difference in the two.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
trying to sort them out.
No, it looks like you guys have addressed a lot of the issues that have been brought before us. And I know we kind of put you on the spot to get it done in a short amount of time, but thank you guys for doing that, because it looks good. It's good to me.
I agree. You guys had a lot going on. Thank you.
So the only thing that I'd like to look into about this is the recreational lodging facility is a very large umbrella. Okay, so to me it looks like this would apply to someone that had wanted to put one cabin or cottage on their property, and they would have to go through all this to make that happen. They'd have to have 10 acres, and that, I don't think that's quite right. I think there should be some sort of smaller limit on it to when recreational lodging facility comes into place, because we're looking at big campgrounds and stuff here. I think there should be a limit of cottages or whatever that someone could put on their property before all these ordinances come into play for them. So whether that number is 2, 4, whatever it may be, you know, I just had an idea of 5 or above, then all of this could come into play. That's the only thing that I see. If someone wanted to put 1 or 2 cottages for some supplemental income,
Well, one thing is how these would, like you say, one unit, one cottage, you use the word cottage, depends what it looks like. If it has a bathroom and it has a cooking facilities, it would be a residential dwelling unit.
Okay.
It comes under a different part of the ordinance, and this has nothing to do with that.
All right. Well, that was my question then. So then, as long as that can be separated,
Yeah, it is.
I just didn't see where it was. That works.
Well, yeah.
And why are
If
the,
somebody can have an individual private campsite, if they want to camp on their own property.
So the main difference is just a cooking facility and septic and everything.
Right,
Okay.
yeah. There's certain definition for, what did I just say,
Residential dwelling unit.
residential dwelling unit, yes.
All right.
and what's with the smokeless fire pits? Who goes camping and don't have a wood fire?
What's that?
I said, what's with the smokeless fire pits? Who goes camping without a wood fire? Right?
Well, you got the wood fire, you just don't have the smoke. There was a lot of complaints about smoke, and I know that our fire chief has said that he gets complaints every summer about smoke from the two campgrounds that we have, yet he can't do anything about it. So we thought that might be a good solution.
What is it? What do you smoke with fire pit?
It create, by design, it will create a draft that is just more efficient at burning. It will burn carbon in a way that the fire that just sets on the ground won't.
So it's still.
I mean, it's not, they're not smokeless, but they're not as smoky as a regular.
You can still cook over them.
So you're not gonna cut out all these wood sales on the side of the road? then?
No.
No, wood's still gets used.
No, I think it looks
Yep.
good. I'm
I
happy
think they
with
worked
it.
hard and they pulled it together and it's not a fun job, so. I'll
Oh,
make a motion.
hang on just a
Sorry.
second. There's one question that Tim had there.
Yeah, what if somebody, you're talking, you're only allowing 45 of these, and, well, I'm gonna say Peter and I've got 250 acres up the marsh. Well, why couldn't we have 150 of them if you're talking 10 acres rather than, I just don't think there should be that limit on it. I mean, I think Peter's got about 60 acres where he lives. I got 60 acres. Not saying I'm gonna do it, but if I wanted to do something, it's kind of leaving us handicapped. I mean, I'm just thinking that, fine, you got a limit on so many, you gotta have so much land for each one, it's all fine, but we shouldn't be penalized, and I think you'll find that land up there, it's like 15 different lots.
Yeah.
And they will buy as lots. So if you wanted to separate it, you shouldn't be penalized for something that was already a separate lot.
Yeah.
Just like down in your house, Jim, I think we sold you a piece of land, somebody else sold you a piece of land, your parents give you a piece of land, you see what I'm saying?
Yep. Yeah, I would refer to the planning board to answer that, just because I don't wanna, that's their thing.
Jim, I think the concern was traffic and the overall impact by a larger campground. There was a lot of, through our discussions and public hearings and that sort of thing, there were a lot of concerns expressed about that, so we tried to address that. We didn't hear anybody arguing your point at those public hearings.
Well, I don't do Zoom, so I can't act. If somebody doesn't have balls enough, it comes to me, I got nothing to say about that.
Yeah,
But,
yeah.
I don't do it.
Yeah.
That's why I don't go to town meetings, because we do it on Zoom and.
I understand it. Yeah, there are people that can't access it.
Right.
But I also have a question. If you guys are so concerned about the extra traffic, then on this side of the island alone, how many summer rentals are there that causes extra traffic?
we have a process going on now regarding the comprehensive plan, and I believe that's one of the issues that we'll be discussing.
Yeah, what was interesting is that we were really trying to balance and take in a lot of considerations. And we raised that, you know, it's not just campgrounds. There are a lot of folks, even folks that were complaining about the campgrounds, we know have short-term rentals. And they bring people on this side of the island. So, but it wasn't what we were focused on as part of the moratorium and those specific efforts were at a campground. As we mentioned, though, there is a larger process that's, we hope to get kickstarted again, that's the comprehensive plan that will look at everything. But we couldn't really tackle it here now.
Sorry to cut you off of that, Mackenzie, when we had a thing.
I wasn't
I just saw
paying
a hand. I didn't. I think we're all set now. Yeah.
Okay, I'll try again. I will make a motion to certify and sign the May 9th, 2022 version of the land use ordinance. Request the town manager to place it on the warrant for town meeting by referendum and recommend passage by town meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to certify and sign the May 9th, 2022 version of the land use ordinance. Request the town manager to place it on the warrant for town meeting by referendum and to recommend passage by town meeting. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? All right, next we have the site plan review ordinance, which, once again, sorry, Mark,
I can do
or
that
you can do that one.
There's only one little change.
Yeah, there's only one change on page
Yep.
15, to save paper, I only put that page in your packet.
Yep.
And it's just to bring it in line with the land use ordinance in regards to recreational lodging facility parking.
Just that last couple lines.
Yeah, just that last.
Yeah, just changes campground to recreational lodging facilities. The parking stays the same.
Yep.
Parking stays the same.
Yep.
I make a motion to certify and sign the May 9th, 2022 version of the site plan review ordinance. Request the town manager to place it on the warrant for town meeting by referendum, and recommend passage by town meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to certify and sign the May 9th, 2022 version of the site plan review ordinance and to request the town manager to place it on the warrant for town meeting by referendum and recommend passage by town meeting. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Okay. Swap these two around. All right, now we have the first citizens petition. It's the ordinance to protect the town of Tremont from excessive campground development. Does everybody have all their paperwork in front of them? More or less.
So in your packets was a copy of the memo from the town clerk, Ms. Langerin, along with a copy of this petition. And handout number 2, I believe, on your counter was a receipt from Deputy Clerk Peters Grinnell this morning. Steve Austin brought in additional petitions with the attached pages that were missing from the initial submittal, and the clerk verified those signatures on that this morning.
And there was an email sent to us from Dick Spencer.
Yes.
I'm not sure if you're here, but, oh, okay, sorry, I can't tell with a mask on. It's hard for us to get information at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a meeting day and have a chance to review it. So, I mean, I get the gist of it. I mean, I've got this front page, but I didn't have time to see all the attachments.
And I speak to the board. I represent CPR, and if I could have a minute to speak to the board.
Yep.
The issue here, under Maine law, when a petition is submitted by, is it okay if I take my mask?
Yes. Yep.
Is submitted by 10% of the voters requesting an article on the board is required to put it on the warrant and leave it up to the voters whether they want to approve it or not. And the board can put their recommendation underneath it. In other words, you just recommended the planning board version. This one would be somewhat stricter, and the board can say we don't recommend this one. But you are required to actually put it on the ballot and let the voters decide. You're kind of in the role of a coach, of a referee in a basketball game. And you can make sure that the meeting is conducted according to the rules, but you aren't allowed to say, we're only gonna allow one basket at one end of the court. And here we have two proposals, one from CPR and one from the planning board, and it's up to the voters to vote on that. And that's all CPR is asking, is that this go on the ballot so the voters can vote one way or the other. There is a doctrine in the Maine law called a reasonable refusal, where the selectmen can refuse to put it on the ballot if it's a reasonable refusal. But it has to be an objectively reasonable refusal. And there are a lot of cases on this. I actually did one for Vasselbar 32 years ago. You're allowed to do a reasonable refusal essentially in 5 situations. One, if you're being asked to put an article on the warrant that would exceed the town's authority. So you're being asked to put something on that the town can't do because it's outside of the town's authority. The second one is if somebody gives you an article and it's illegal, and then asking you to put an article on the warrant is illegal. You can refuse to do that. The third one is if the town has adopted a vote like to issue a bond and signed a contract to build a school, and then somebody comes in with a petition and says we want to revoke the authority to issue the bond, you can refuse that. And the fourth one is you can't, if you have a town meeting and the town meeting votes, and then there's a motion to reconsider and that fails, and then the meeting is adjourned, voters can't come in and say, now we want you to put it on the ballot again and reconsider what was already done. And that case we just had in Hartsville about 2 years ago. And then the last one, at least according to Maine Municipal, is if the article is complete, it's unintelligible. Nobody can figure out what it means. It's written in Japanese, I don't know what, but something that just makes no sense. You can refuse to do that. And all of those grounds for a reasonable refusal are set out in the Maine Municipal manual on town meetings and elections, which I emailed a copy of it. If you don't have it, I have copies here. But basically, what I just described is what the Maine Municipal Association says about this reasonable refusal. Otherwise, you're required to put it on the ballot and then leave it up to the voters to decide. Putting it on the ballot doesn't mean you're in favor of it, doesn't mean you're suggesting it, it doesn't mean anything in terms of your support for it. And when we did the petition, I very purposefully put in each article by petition so that it would be clear to the voters that this was coming in from a petition and didn't have the endorsement of the Board of Selectmen. And if you don't think these articles are a good idea and you want the voters to vote against them, you can put a recommendation underneath the article that says Board of Selectmen recommend against passage of the article. But you have an obligation to let the voters vote, and that's all we're asking.
Thanks. James, I would like your legal opinion on this.
You want to hear from Mr. Hamilton and Mr. Bear before I talk?
Okay.
You
All
sure
right.
you want to talk?
All right. Yep. Just I don't want it to turn into everybody in the room speaking at this time, so, yep. Okay, yeah. Go ahead, Andy, first.
So, thank you, Andrew Hamilton, Council for Acadia Wilderness Lodge. I just want to remind the Select Board that CTR is the group that opposes the Acadia Wilderness Lodge. They're looking to kill the project. They've retained a council. Council's name is Dick Spencer and Amy Chow. And so if you would understand Mr. Spencer's objectives, they filed, the same day they filed on February 28th, initial petitions, they filed a pre-hearing submission with the Board of Appeals seeking to vacate the planning board permit. Vacate means to terminate, eliminate, and treat as though it was never issued. So you need to understand what they're trying to do either directly or effectively, indirectly, through this action with petition 1 and petition 2. And I have more serious concerns with petition 2 because it's less transparent. Petition 1 is very transparent. It would seek to reduce the density of a campground like Acadia Wilderness Lodge from 55 units down to 20 units, specifically in the text of that particular petition 4 article. Secondly, it would seek to increase minimum requirements that would again reduce the density. So what they couldn't do before the planning board, they're now seeking to do through land use ordinance amendments. This goes directly to what Mr. Spencer referred to as the first two circumstances when a select board not only might, but it should. It has the right and duty to refuse to place petition 4 articles on the warrant. He stated the first was when it exceeds the town's authority, this will exceed the town's authority, or when it's illegal, it will be illegal. And let me just lay out the reason why. First, courts have upheld the refusal of a petition as reasonable where the petition is requested an action that would be illegal if passed. So you have that authority, you have that right and duty. Second, the Hawkins secured the AWL permit on November 1st, 2021. Through the first 4 months of 2021, the original application for 154 units was reviewed by the planning board. In response to comments from the planning board and the public at public meetings, and neighborhood meetings, at private neighborhood meetings, the AWL project team learned of concerns and modified the application from 154 sites, including 72 RV sites, and you've heard the planning board speak to their amendment that would eliminate new RV sites on a new campground. We did that through the modification process. We went down to 55 tent and yurt sites with no RV sites. That substantially reduced the 55-unit campground application, and that was approved after public hearings before the board on September 21, October 12, October 26, October 27. Yep, that's 4 meetings with public hearings, and then during final deliberations on November 1, 2021. This final permit is protected under Maine state law, passed in 2011. That law is found at Title 30A, Section 3007, subsection 6, which we'll detail shortly. So you've got 3 sets of amendments before you've already acted on the first set, the planning board's amendments. There's nothing that creates a special, effective, or applicability rule that is the tricky provision in petition 2 that I really want to make sure you have careful information on and counsel on before you were to ever place petition 2 before the voters. Petition 1 is the 8-page petition, which essentially looks to not only nullify but to substantially amend the land use permit. So, with respect to your authority, I think Mr. Spencer has both conceded and made clear that if the petition either exceeds the legal authority of the town or is illegal, it can't be placed before the voters. So what does Title 30A, Section 3007-6 provide? It says specifically in subsection 6, adopted in 2011, passed by the legislature, signed by the governor, restriction on nullification of final permit. The municipality may not nullify or amend a municipal land use permit by a subsequent enactment, amendment, or repeal of a local ordinance after a period of 45 days has passed. The 45-day period ended on December 16. This is seeking to have you adopt 2 tandem petition 4 articles that would effectively circle back to this project in any number of ways, with a vacating of the permit by the Board of Appeals, if that's what it decides to do, or even without vacating the permit by the Board of Appeals. This, the law says you cannot do. As long as the permit has received its last final approval, it did, after 4 public hearings and a 5th meeting where the board held deliberations, it received final approval of the planning board. Second, if required, a public hearing was held on the permit. There were 4 public hearings held. Unlike the CTR petition amendments, which were only the subject of neighborhood meetings and drafting in professional offices, the planning board went through a process to conduct a public hearing on this permit application and to then make a decision after those public hearings. For purposes of this subsection, municipal land use permit includes a building permit, a zoning permit, a subdivision approval, a site plan approval, which is the one we received, a site plan approval, or other land use permit approval. For the purposes of this subsection, nullify or amend, this is the really key part that needs to be understood about this law, means to nullify or amend a municipal land use permit directly, or to nullify or amend any other municipal permit in a manner that effectively nullifies or amends a municipal land use permit. So you've got the November 1 site plan approval, you've got public hearings being held on September 21, October 12th, October 26th, and 27th, and then final deliberations on November 1st. Thus, if any ordinance amendment to either amend or nullify that permit were to be acted on by action on an ordinance, it would have had to have been done within 45 days. Even before this board received the request to extend the moratorium, which you decided on January 20th, and decided unanimously not to extend, because you were not satisfied that actions were taken during the interim period between the start of the moratorium on August 2 and the end of the moratorium on February 2. This is an even more transparent effort to try to affect the permit well after December 16. So if you were to act on either petition 1 or petition 2, it would violate state law. Why is this important? I would like each of the board members and members of the public to put themselves in the shoes of the Hopkins for a moment. The Hopkins have the benefit of Article 1, Section 1 of the Maine Constitution. It says simply this: all people are born equally free and independent, and have certain natural, inherent, and unalienable rights, among which are those of enjoying and defending life and liberty, acquiring, possessing, and protecting property, and of pursuing and obtaining safety and happiness. What in essence the Maine legislature has done is it has given a due process right to recipients of final permits, protecting them from subsequent ordinance amendments. And that's what these 2 petitions, petition 1 clearly does, petition 2 does more artfully, but it absolutely does. So I would ask you not to advance this to the voters. It's proposing an illegal action if passed by the voters of this municipality. And I'm sure we'll hear arguments about why it doesn't apply. I want the opportunity to respond to those.
I'm just gonna call on the
Could I
attorneys
speak
for
for a
now,
second?
and then we'll get to everybody, after. But
Actually, I'd like a little clarification on that.
Sure, please.
Because I'm looking at this and I don't see where any part of that should affect a permit that's already been issued. That's not the way I've read that, and I'm not an attorney. But I don't see what you're referring to as affecting a permit that's already been issued. So I'd like some clarification on how you get that out of that. I mean, it tells me that if I read this, it's, what's the exact wording? Shall, if approved by voters, govern.
Let me explain that very clearly. It's very simple.
Okay.
If you look at the 2 of them, which Andy's inartfully has attempted to do, if you connect the 2 of them in your mind and say, what are they trying to do here? What they're trying to do is they're trying to say, with the second one, that anything that's before, pending, proceeding is this wide, you can drive a truck through it, it's this wide, they're gonna follow these rules. So what Andy Hamilton is saying is, we already got our approval. You can't come around and change the law afterwards
Mhm.
and say there's new things coming, and they apply to this old permit.
I understand
You have
that.
to look at the argument, you look at both of them together.
No, I understand that. Do you feel that this wording affects a permit that's already been issued, James?
Good.
Okay, that's,
I do. Well, let me answer your
okay,
question
that's
more
part of
directly. I
it.
was looking for the text of petition 2.
Okay.
And petition 2 has to be consulted in the context of petition 1 because it says this language. Any amendments to the town of Tremont land use ordinance and or site plan review ordinance that are submitted to the voters of the town of Tremont, either at the town of Tremont 2022 annual town meeting and election scheduled to be held on or about May 10, 2022, or at a prior special town meeting, call for their consideration, shall, if approved by the voters, govern and apply to any applications and proceedings for recreational lodging facilities, which has been more broadly defined already by the planning board amendments that you voted to advance, to include campgrounds, that were, are, or become pending before the town of Tremont's code enforcement officer or the town of Tremont planning board on or at any time after the effective date of those amendments.
Okay. Where are you reading that? I didn't see that.
Petition 2. It's document 6E in the materials that were in your public packet of March 2.
6B.
And the key language.
I don't see
6E, he said.
Yeah,
6E,
yeah.
right here, Kevin. That's right.
The key language
Okay.
that has been used in the petition number 2 is language of the law court, including a case that Mr. Bear litigated with the town of Washington. You have to use code words if you want to make your ordinances retroactive or applicable before the effective date. And it is this language. Notwithstanding the provisions of Title I MRS Section 302 or any other law to the contrary. So they've got magical language in
Okay, that's what I
petition
was
2
missing.
that will relate it back to this project. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair,
Yeah, I'll let you answer, and then I'd like to go to Edgar.
if you read what it says that notwithstanding 1302, it applies to pending proceedings before the planning board and the CEO on or after the date they're adopted. So it's not looking backwards at prior final approvals. If they have a final approval, this has nothing to do with it. What could happen, and I'll acknowledge it could happen, if their approvals were overturned by the courts or the Board of Appeals, and they had to start over again and go back to the planning board, it's possible it could then apply to them. But what it's written to do is to apply to, going forward, to anything that hasn't received approval. And that's what it says. It says on or after the May 10th date. So it doesn't apply backwards to them.
I'd like, Ed, can you go?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can everybody hear me? I sit right here. Okay. I'll be brief. I agree with everything that Andy has said. I do think that you may have some limitations in connection with whether this would lawfully preempt his license, and you might feel duty bound to pursue that, his permit rather, if this alternative article were to pass. But I didn't have a chance to study this either, Mr. Chairman. I got it this afternoon, but I am noticing in the MMA handout that they gave you on page 114, it talks about alternative articles. And MMA does not recommend, it says, however, where alternative articles are not advisable, where voting is by secret ballot referendum because of chance that both will be approved, because ballots must offer only yes or no choices, there's no opportunity to directly ask for a choice among two alternatives. So you could end up with, and I do represent the town of Bar Harbor, and we did face similar scenarios there a couple of years ago. You could end up with a positive vote in both of these situations. Mr. Spencer would have you believe that because their article is more restrictive, it has to be the one that you adopt. I don't accept that premise whatsoever. That's for competing ordinances. It's not for simultaneous amendments to an ordinance. So I think that maybe the worst case scenario, if you have both articles pass, because I don't think either one of them takes effect at that point, you're probably stuck with what you presently have. But I do think that you do have the discretion to not place this petition on the warrant for the May 10th meeting. And I do believe that as it's worded, and as I understood Mr. Spencer's letter on page 3, it plainly would apply to anything that's pending before the planning board or the code officer on May 10th, on or after May 10th. As I've said to you before, I represent a fairly small proposed use of less than 15 cabins. And we feel like we're getting a bit whipsawed here. We may finally reach a point where we're deemed complete tomorrow night, but I could conceive where the planning board might not be able to complete its review by May 10th, and then we'd be subject to further standards that would be retroactive. I'm sure that they would try to make them retroactive. So I would urge you not to put this on the ballot.
James, it's your turn.
As a person who doesn't have a dog in this fight, living on the other side of the island like I do, I studied these all week, and I agree with Mr. Bear, who I don't always agree with, but I certainly agree with him on this one. And it's a real problem for the board, right? While Mr. Spencer might have a point, and I don't know whether he does or not, and I couldn't find any case law on it, I certainly think it's awfully stupid. Just stupid. To take two things that contradict each other and put them both on the ballot. Because if they're both passed, what do you end up with there? Do you say the amount of square footage that you have? It includes this or it includes that? Which is it? Your average person comes in, right? I tested this afternoon with my law partner. She's a pretty sharp cookie, right? Got a lot of good practice in law for 30 years. And I said to her, which one would you, if you were an applicant, would you think that applied? She said, well, I wouldn't know which one applied. I said, well, it's the more restrictive. She said, then I got to make a choice every time and dig through that? I think it's preposterous of anyone to ask you to put two conflicting things and make them law at the same time. Secondly, in regard to the second one, which Andy wanted to bring in, the effect of the two of them together, as I was trying to explain to Kevin earlier, I think what this has done is an end run around the whole thing. In reading that second petition, I'm confused as hell. I'm just confused. I looked at it, and I looked at it. Proceedings to me means one thing, lawsuits. That's what I think proceedings mean. When I see the word proceeding, I think lawsuit. I did the Chad Smith today, and I got out the dictionary and I went through the word proceed and proceedings. It means a lot of different things. One of the things it means is lawsuit. There's currently a suit, I don't know, I think it's in Spirit, Mr. Hamilton is trying to get a transfer to business court regarding the first application a year and a half ago. There's an appeal on the second application. I can conceive, nobody's going to like this, but I can conceive of all kinds of situations that might be trapped by the way this thing is written, because it's so broad, poorly written. You could, for example, have a condition under either one of the permits that Mr. Hamilton's clients got that had to be taken care of by the code enforcement officer. I guess you're not anymore, the lawsuits. The code enforcement officer could have to fulfill a condition. Usually with a big application, you have conditions, and then it's delegated to the code enforcement officer to make sure those conditions are fulfilled, sometimes in concert with the planning board. Every time that comes up, would it get in there and say, oh, this new law applies? What about these people? I don't care whether they get a camping permit or not. I could care less. But they got a permit. 45 days went by. Does it apply to theirs? Well, I don't know. The thing's poorly worded. So in the first one, I don't know if it's lawful or not, but I think it's just stupid to put two in where they conflict with each other. And I don't think you should do it for that reason. On the second one, I don't understand it. Now, I'm not a sophist, I'm not sophisticated. I'm a simple guy. And after practicing law for municipal law for 20 years, I don't understand. And anything that I don't understand clearly how it applies, I don't want to advise you to put on the warrant. I think that's stupid. Because unless you guys are, well, you probably are smarter than me, but unless you can pick it up and go, I understand that. I don't think you should put it
I'll let you reply to that. I know.
I'd just like to make very few brief comments. One is, this applies prospectively, so that it's not going back to anybody's previous permit. We're not asking the board to say, we support this article. We're saying that the voters of the town have the right to vote on whether they support these or not. They basically would put stricter requirements on campgrounds if that's what the town wants to do. If the town doesn't want to do that, obviously they wouldn't do that. The other thing, in terms of this conflict thing, your ordinance currently says that if there are two conflicting provisions, the stricter one applies. The CTR one says that if you pass both of these things, the stricter one would apply. It's very clear which is stricter and which isn't. 75 feet setback or 100-foot setback. 20 camping units or 45. There's not going to be any ambiguity there. The other thing is that under the statutes, if the board doesn't put these on the warrant and CTR wants to do it, they can, and they basically can collect another petition and go to a notary public and call a town meeting to adopt these articles. And that would be the only articles that would be on that town meeting. It would be way better to give the town and voters the choice which one of these things they want to support. And that's all we're asking, is let the voters decide.
Can I address that point?
No, I want to address that first.
Yeah.
Go ahead, James.
Representing the town, I don't want to be threatened by anybody.
Right.
And let me finish. You talk, now I'm gonna talk. The way to do zoning in a town, you all know what it is. It goes to the Mr. Mark there. He has the planning board. They go through the planning process. If you like it, you appear before the planning board. Right? You pass it or you don't pass it. And then you agitate, you call Mark, you call members of the planning board, you call the select board, you work on it over the next couple of years. What this proposal is to sue us into the ground. This is a proposal that says, adopt it, I'm gonna get under your head or I'm gonna shoot you. I'm gonna go off and do another meeting. I've heard of this. I've read about it. You can go to a notary public. I've never seen it done in Hancock County. Mr. Bear is a very experienced attorney, so is Mr. Hamilton. Both of them do a lot of municipal stuff. They might do it in Cumberland County. But to come into a small town in rural Maine and say, you better put this, you're required to put it on the ballot or we're gonna sue you. And take this other methodology and go off and do our own meeting. What are they gonna do next? They're gonna petition how to run everything?
Can you guys please be respectful back there and just stop talking while everybody else is, please?
So I just don't think that's a valid thing. I've already discussed this with my co-counsel, Zachary Brandmore, and Christine Shore. He tells me we're ready. He's working on this to go to get a declaratory judgment if we have to go to court. I'd hate to think that that's where we have to do. I mean, it's bad enough we have to have Bernstein Shore attached to us for litigation purposes to go in and do some sort of a temporary restraining order with a declaratory judgment. Is that what we've got to do in Tremont? I just don't think that's the way you should do anything.
I know. I'm at a loss of words with this. I just don't understand either. I guess the process, I don't understand why the CTR group has asked multiple times for changes. The planning board has spent a lot of time in a short amount of time, and I give them props for that, to make these changes. And they made them, I mean, things are very similar. I know there's some differences, but they've done a good job at really knocking out the work quick. Why not let why not let the process go as it should?
Because we feel like we're not being represented. That's why.
Well, then I would say, then,
Yeah.
I mean, you need
have
to.
428 people who showed up to vote for that moratorium.
Yeah.
And they did good work. We appreciate what the planning board did. I said that. Multiple people have said that. And we feel like they just, in a few key areas, didn't really hear the concerns that people were saying. Density was a big issue. And we're just asking for the chance to vote on these things to give us a choice.
Why wouldn't you wait until this has been passed by?
Because when there's a problem, you don't wait to fix it.
No, but that way there wouldn't be two conflicting things, is what I'm getting at. Why there wouldn't be two conflicting things on to vote on, you know, so that if the planning boards, you know, got voted on yes, and you said this is not restrictive enough, then say we would like it more restrictive right after it, and that way you wouldn't have this whole conflict of which one do we choose, which, you know, I think it's going to be very.
The language in the petition ordinance changes says that the stricter one applies. That is separate from the petition 2. If you don't like the petition 2, if that's the issue, then that is the next thing on the agenda. But you've already said that the planning board ordinance is reasonable. Our petition ordinance is very similar. It's almost exactly the same except for a few areas where many people felt like more adequately addressed the concerns we brought up. In 2.5 days, we had 161 people sign that petition. That's not insignificant.
No, not saying it is. I'm just saying there's proper ways to go about things, and I just feel like that bringing a petition in front of everybody every 5 minutes probably isn't really the best.
When people don't feel like they're being represented.
Well, then they should run for boards. They should do.
So people have.
Okay.
And people have run for boards. And I personally, if you're looking at me to run, I would like to do that someday, but I don't feel like I have the time to fully commit to that right now. And running for a board is one way to participate, but being an engaged citizen member is also another way to participate.
Yeah.
And being dismissive of the people you are supposed to be representing is what is drawing a line in this community right now.
But the other hand is, the rest of us, some of us feel like they're doing a hell of a job instead of slamming the ones that get voted in there.
Well, let's take it to a vote. Exactly. That's why we vote on it. If you don't want it, then don't vote for it. There's 2 choices.
Okay. Everyone raises their hand to speak. Sorry, I know you've been waiting for a while. Go ahead. Yes, you, Greg. Sorry.
Thank you. So I want to not get into the merits of some of the changes in the second petition, but particularly whether you'd be advancing something illegally which would not be in the best interest of the town. Kevin Bucket asked, how does it relate to the prior one, and where is it? And the devil's in the details. And in section 6E, it applies to government apply application of proceedings to recreational lodging facilities that were, are, or become pending in Tremont, including the code officer. What that says is the changes to affect AWL's building permits they need for all things going forward. It's that transparent. You don't have to read very deep to see how far that grabs. So,
Greg, sorry to interrupt you. Where are you reading?
6E.
In the land use ordinance?
No.
In the handout 6E. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, that's what I'm trying to.
How does that affect? And everybody says, oh, it doesn't affect those. But yes, it does. They need building permits. That was my comment.
Next was, sorry, Andy, but I had next was Brett, and then someone over here. Okay, Brett.
Well, I just want to make a couple of comments. I'm on the planning board. And one of the things, the way government generally works is, you have 5 people up there, you're representative of all the voices. And we have members of the planning board, we try to represent all the voices, including the voices we just heard back here, some voices over here, some voices over there. And that's called the representative republic. That's representative government. When you start, I don't even know if CTR is in the majority. There are definitely a lot of people, there are definitely a lot of voices, we hear them. But let's assume that they are. Let's assume it's the majority of people. The reason we are representative government and we have panels of people that represent all the interests is so that you don't end up with a tyranny, what's called the tyranny of the majority, where the majority interest subvert the interest of anyone else. And that's why you have people, that's why you have these processes. And these people on the boards that compromise, we discuss, we take into interest all the considerations. And so you don't have these sort of herky-jerky one-off petitions that are just, land use by reactionary land use ordinances. It doesn't work that way, it shouldn't work that way, you're absolutely right.
You on the end, sorry. Rachel, yes.
I think this is, it's gotten very oppositional, and obviously this has become very emotional for a lot of people. And I think that there has it's become somehow political and frustrating. One of the things that I'm frustrated about is that this has become like a AWL against CTR thing. But what's frustrating for me is that, one of the things that I thought this particular thing was about future campgrounds. I'm the person who lives right behind where AWL apparently is about to be, because as Andy Hamilton has said, their permit has been approved. So I'm right now trying to enjoy the fact that there's nothing behind me right now. I'm trying to enjoy the sunsets for right now because Disney World's about to be behind me in the backyard. So I just had to give that up and get over it. And so apparently it's already been approved. So I'm over it. So I don't know why he even cares that this is about, that I'm hoping it's a done deal. I don't know why he's fighting this so hard about being on the ballot, because he won. I thought that this was over. So I don't know why he cares, because I thought that he won already. He shouldn't care that we all get a chance just to vote on this. But apparently he's still fighting it so hard. I don't know. But what I thought this was about is that all the other people who are going to have a chance to not have gigantic campgrounds on their property. I'm trying to help other people not have the problem that I'm about to have of a gigantic campground taking over their backyard. So that's why I'm helping other people, because I got caught. So the thing is what I don't understand is why they're so threatened about putting something on a ballot. If people don't want these things that we just got a petition for, then they won't vote for it. What is so threatening about putting something on a ballot? Let people vote or not vote. That's what I don't understand. Like Dick said, if people don't want it, then they won't vote for it. I don't understand what the problem is. My thing is this. Let me just finish real quickly, please. I just want to say this very quickly. First of all, I think we're using volatile language. Respectfully, when you use words like stupid, I take huge offense at that. I'm an educator. That word is very frustrating for me. Please don't use words like stupid and expect everyone to be okay with that. Using words like stupid, we put a ton of time in trying to be respectful in the language that we put in petitions. We are putting a ton of time in trying to be respectful. When you say this is just stupid, these are our homes, these are our lives. We all care about this community. What I did is I put my time in to moving into this community, and I came here with no money. I came here and moved into a rental, into my parents' broken down shack, and put my money, tried to build enough money to find a home and live here. James Hopkins has a home behind my house and says he can't move here unless he can have a plant ground. Okay? I now work I do community service by serving on the Bass River Memorial Library board. I volunteer. I do community service. I shop at Gott's. I shop at Hanson's. I shop at Food Mart. I put money into this community every single day. I work at the library, and my kids go to the schools here. Don't you want to value my contribution in this community? And yet, Andy Hamilton, who doesn't live in this community, and Greg Johnson, who doesn't live in Tremont, we're listening to them more than you're listening to me and the 161 people who signed my petition. What are you trying to value? I don't understand why you're not valuing the people who signed the petition and just letting them vote.
All right, thank you.
I'm just saying, let's
can't.
be kind.
No.
That's all I'm saying, is be kind to the people who care about this stuff.
And
if you don't want them to vote, fine. But we're trying, and I care about this place.
Okay, we need to move on, let other
All
people
I'm
speak,
saying,
please.
Let's just be kind.
Just
Let's not throw around.
And this isn't a public hearing.
No, this is not a
This is not a public hearing.
Yeah.
Let's not throw
And
around mean words, please.
So if I could respond to the mean
Yes,
words.
please.
I apologize if you don't like my choice of words. How about I say, I just wrote down, procedurally and legally speaking, it is not a good idea.
That's fair.
too many years in the boat, I talk with commissioners and the lawyers sometimes. I'm not emotional, and I'm objective to the whole thing. I represent the board, and from a legal standpoint, it's a bad idea.
That's fair. Saying
And
something
so,
stupid is just
To
cavalier.
all right, let's go. Specifically answer your question. If the petitioner said, we have the vote in May 9th, vote on it, and then on July 15th or August 1st, they vote on a second set of amendments, I'd say, hey, fine, great, because I don't care one way or another. That would be fine with me. But the idea of having two at the same time that could oppose each other, I think that's procedurally and legally speaking not a good idea.
That's a lot different than that's stupid.
Not the same thing to me, but.
Well,
All right, moving on to, I think it was Andy first and then Tim after that.
So I just want to address a couple of things that have been said. First, I think Mr. Spencer fairly said that if an appeal could result in sending the permit back to the planning board, or even worse, vacating the permit, he'll have a very heavy burden before the Board of Appeals for them to vacate the permit. But if they were to vacate the permit, we'll be starting from the beginning all over again and having to go through that process. And so he acknowledges that it's possible that Title 30A, Section 3007, subsection 6 applies. If it applies, it says a municipality may not. It's not a question of judgment. It's a question of whether it's illegal and beyond the power of the town. And I think it's really helpful for this reason, for the select board to make a clear finding on this one. And that is, if you think that it is possible that 3007-6 applies, you should so find. Why? Because there's case law in response to Mr. Spencer's point that responded to Mr. Collier's observation that he was concerned that there was a threatening. I'll acknowledge that I found it a little bit threatening because I'm seeing a client whose project went through the public review process. We did what we were supposed to do. We went to public hearings. We worked with the planning board. We addressed their questions. We worked through the process. That's the difference between Mr. Hamilton as an attorney for residents of this town who want to come back to this town and be able to have a campground. We went through the process. The difference is CTR developed through an attorney back at his office and then through private neighborhood meetings, a process. The state of Maine says if you're going to have zoning, it's got to be consistent with a comprehensive plan. That's Title 30A, Section 4352(2). It also says that updates to a comprehensive plan must be conducted in open public meetings. That doesn't mean private neighborhood meetings on Zoom. That means you go through the planning board process. So the difference, if I may, is we were subject to the process. We went through the process. We got a decision. The difference is here, they're trying to use a private process based on their preferences and force it before the town voters. And I actually think the courts won't uphold a notary calling a special town meeting, and I think the town could get a declaratory judgment to that effect. The reason for that is the law of Maine provides that a notary can only call a special town meeting if the refusal of the select board to place a petition for article on the warrant is unreasonable. Again, as Mr. Spencer said tonight, one of the reasons you can refuse to place the petition on the warrant is if it's illegal or beyond the authority of the town. So Parsons versus Inhabitants of the Town of Carmel, 2002 Westlaw 32079473 at 3. It's a Maine Superior Court decision, February 21, 2002. And it says the CTR group will be constrained if they want to try to affect this permit in violation of the law. They'll be subject. As Mr. Johnston said, and he should be listening on this point because he knows the land use review process. Even though we got a site plan approval, we can't build the project without a building permit. There's no way the building permit is gonna be applied for before the appeal process is finished. There's no way the appeal process will be finished by May 10th. So we will become subject to this ordinance if you adopt it. So I'd ask you, find that it would be illegal if placed on the warrant, because if you do that, you insulate the town, as the Maine Municipal Association says, from challenge by a notary calling a special town meeting. Thank you.
Tim, you were next.
I have a question to the board. If you have two things Sean will put on there, correct? Okay. Wouldn't you have three to vote on? You have the existing, you'd have to vote, and then you have the two new ones. So, geez, you can't really deal with three at a time because, you know, what do you end up with? I mean, you either gotta vote for, you know, doesn't necessarily mean that one of the new ones wins, the old one might be fine. It just makes it confusing, you put three on. I mean, it's just something you guys gotta think about.
All right, I believe there was someone in the middle there that had their hand up, and then you next. What's that? Oh, Mackenzie, sorry.
I mean, like I said before, this is not a public hearing, and we can listen to attorneys all night long. Really, the only opinion that matters to me is James. And I completely and totally support our planning board. They have been dragged through the mud over and over and over. They have worked hard. They've put this together. That should be the end of this. And if you guys want to call a special town meeting with your notary, then okay. But I agree with James. I'm tired of being threatened. I'm tired of being, dragged around town. I'm tired of being threatened, being recalled. I'm over it, the whole thing.
And I apologize, I didn't mean that as a threat.
But it's okay. I mean, he gets in trouble for saying stupid, but there's threats coming from over here. So, well,
The point I was trying to make is.
again, I don't really care. His opinion is what matters to me.
And she's not just speaking on this behalf. We get threatened
No.
Multiple times.
This has been going on for a long time.
This is not just a
A long
one-time occurrence. So.
And we have been
Yeah.
thoughtful, we have listened, we have gone to meetings, we have shown up, and the CTR is never going to be happy with anything. It's never going to be good enough.
Now, hang on just a second. You wait your turn. That's just how it goes. The person in the middle gets to speak next.
It's not political. I could, honestly, again, you say I don't care, that's not true.
You just said you don't.
Okay, but you know what? The campground to me, if it goes, it goes. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I support the process. And the process is the five of us getting our heads together, supporting our planning board. And again, if you want to be on a committee, come fill out an application. It doesn't have to be this one. Any of you. I've said that at many meetings. And everybody sits there and just stares at the five of us.
Yeah.
You made it just clear that it's us that's the problem.
No, I just feel like we can't make you happy.
You just said what?
I feel like we can't make you happy. The planning board has really tried, and even you guys have said that there's only a couple differences between what the CTR wants and what the planning board is
So why
proposing.
not let us vote on that? And it sounds to me like the problem that you have is with the second petition.
I have a
Two
problem.
separate things.
Okay, hang on. Let's
Yeah,
just
okay.
let's
I'm done.
stop. I'm gonna call on people in order how I was, and okay, sorry, I don't know your name. I can't tell with the mask up either, but
That's fine. I am not a member of CTR.
Tell us your name so you don't need the mask. And tell us who you are.
My name is Wesley Asiden. I'm a Tremont resident. I am not a member. I am very much in favor of this petition as an independent for many reasons, not the least of which is I have sat at town meetings in this hall and in the gym for decades and seen the entire town life, the budget, the everything, police, no police, decided by under 100 people, year in and year out. And now you have a situation where hundreds of people are asking to be heard, and you're not feeling that they have a right to be heard. They have been under pressure. But this is a life of the town that many of us hold to be precious. And we have invested our life, and as I said, for decades I have sat at these town meetings every year, including the one in my car where I believe the entire town life was decided by 47 people. And why is that okay? And it's not okay for several hundred people to want to have their voice heard.
Okay. Next.
You're opposed to that. You understand tone like this. That.
Okay, Gabrielle Graham, I am not a member of CTR, and as if anybody recognizes my name, I have been advocating for changes to our town ordinances for the future. Nothing against AWL per se, just that the ordinances need to be clarified, and the neighborhood, the people who live here need to be protected. The public meetings that we have had with the planning board, frankly, we've heard more hours of Mr. Hamilton talking than any of the rest of us. Somehow he gets his points in no matter what, and then the meeting runs late, and the planning board, yes, they've worked hard, but they cut people off. They cut the public part of the hearing off because it's getting late. There are members of the planning board who make a lot of comments and chuckles under their breath. At the last planning board, one of the planning board members was trying to get the planning board to consider some of the points that the public was bringing up, and the planning board did not want to consider them any further. The public, CTR aside, I mean, they maybe have written up some stuff, but the public as a whole wants to be heard and feel like there is no recourse, because even in public hearings, we have very limited input. Thank you.
Mike?
Can I speak?
Oh, yeah, hang on a second.
I just want to thank the planning board for working so hard on these ordinances.
That's okay.
I have followed almost every planning board meeting. It's always been an interesting thing for me, and I think the proof is, if you do watch them, there's a lot of discussion about all of these ordinances, and I think that they were very clear in taking the middle road and making it fair for everybody. Obviously, you're going to hear from somebody that opposes something more than somebody that's for something, and with land use ordinances, you have to take a little bit at a time, and there's only so much you can process in a year. And I think to take CTR's plan that is, one side without, taking time with the town planner to professionally, go over everything, I think it's going to add to a rushed process that wasn't well thought out. And, Mark and Brett and all the rest of them have worked really, really hard on this to come to a fair conclusion that's, I think, is, somewhere in the middle.
I've been sitting here listening to some pretty good valid arguments, I think. And one of the biggest concerns I've got is if all these do end up on the town warrant at the same time, it is going to be confusing. We may end up with conflicting pieces of the ordinance. My understanding is the whole town's had a hand in working with the planning board, and it may not be what everyone wants, but I think that's pretty correct, isn't it, Mark? You've heard from a lot of people. How would the people presenting the petition feel if we went with the warrant we just approved? Most of the changes are very similar to what is in the petitions, not as restrictive at some point, and agree to have a vote on the petitions 2 months later the same way. That way you're not being presented with two conflicting options, at the same time, where you may end up having a lot of conflicts. I fully respect how many people have come out, how important this is to everyone. And I get it. There's a lot of concern about this. I think the people of that concern should be heard. I just don't want to end up with a huge legal mess and a lot more confusion. And
legally, I support that.
Okay, well, it makes sense to me. And There's an awful lot of interest in this town in these issues, and I think it should go to the voters. I think it'd be really nice if it didn't cause more confusion and more friction.
Yeah, I mentioned it earlier, and I said, when Cindy was talking, I said, even, just a little bit after.
Yeah.
Even wait a day after, just so that
Well, I mean-
so things line up in place.
And the one thing I've seen in your petition that concerns me is the number of people per campsite. I don't see how that's enforceable. That's the only material thing I saw as a bit of an issue. Other than that, it's very similar to what we've just agreed to put on the warrant, and except more restrictive.
But we have gone through the process to take
Yeah.
in account the things that, the most restrictive stuff, to take that in account and to change our current ordinances. And that's what all of this has been about, going through the process and listening to people and getting this done. You can't just be top heavy on one side all the time. It's got to, like Mike said earlier, it's got to be a little bit of everybody. And I feel that we have done the process, and I'm sure when this petition went around that the planning board's ordinance amendments weren't right next to it.
They actually were.
Every time, and every person on this read through every single part of it.
Absolutely.
Okay. And the original ordinance that is current, they know all three.
Yeah,
this
people
was
ask
considered
me
a
to
town
explain
meeting.
to
Yeah,
them.
no, I was just waiting for Eric to get
So
that.
it's got to be clear,
We've been studying this ordinance for the last 2 years, 3 years, since 2019. People ask the questions, and I tell them, I send them to the ordinance language, I send them to the town website. I've been telling people to stay educated, get involved, make your own opinions about what our ordinances are, but this is what we're working with. And, people, this isn't an uneducated movement.
I'm not saying it is,
Yeah.
but you also have to agree that we have worked hard to meet in the middle here.
Oh, absolutely.
So-
And that's why I think we could have advocated for no campgrounds at all in Tremont. But we know that not everybody wants that. So that's why we tried to find something that was more of a compromise, meet in the middle. But the things that people really felt passionate about were density and traffic and maximum occupancy. Those were the big ticket items that people really, really wanted to see addressed.
So an acre of land is, which I get that, 43,000, right? So that's 2 sites per an acre. An acre's pretty large, really.
Well, right now, on your personal property, according to our ordinance, if you want your own campsite on your property, you have to have 30,000 square feet, right? I mean,
Yeah, so
we
it's
felt
3/4
like
of an acre.
20,000 square feet was a reasonable adjustment.
And we went from 5 to 10 with the planning boards, right? Which is,
Originally, we said 30,000 square feet, so when the planning board said 10,000,
Sure.
okay, let's bring that down to 20,000.
sure, I mean, there's always going to be an extreme on every end, I'm not saying that yours is extreme, I'm just saying, but there's always going to be that disagreement.
And we get that. We're not unreasonable people. We're not these evil vigilante campground squatters that we're made out to be. I mean, we just want to have balance within our neighborhoods. We want to be able to have a quality residential life while supporting business in town. And we feel like Tremont has 2 campgrounds already, and we're going to be having more. How many campgrounds can Tremont support realistically moving forward as a global picture?
Oh, absolutely.
That's more of the perspective that we're talking about.
And we do, definitely made a big change to that, with the ordinance changes, the amendments that the planning board put in. I support the planning boards. I like the fact that you put the effort into the petition and stuff, but I think my personal view on it is to support our attorney and the process that we have gone through with the planning board.
Dick.
Chair Thurlow and Vice Chair Bach and members of the to vote on which level of restrictions they want. And I think CPR, if the board were inclined to do what the two of you have suggested, which is to allow a vote, you know, even if it weren't at the town meeting, to give the town a chance to vote on whether they want more restrictive limitations going forward. I think CPR would embrace that and work with the town and the planning board to have that happen.
I would just ask James's legal opinion on that, just to be sure that I think it's a great idea too. I really do, and that's what I think. If we set a date now of just say 2 weeks later or whatever it may be, and then that way you let one vote pass, and then you have the opportunity to put in this more restrictive vote. You know, I'm not about having voters not be able, or, you know, not be able to be heard. I've lived in this town my family's been here for generations. I know what it's all about. There's a process, and if people just help us work through the process, then I'm all for it.
So, Mr. Chairman, I think that would be great. I think Mr. Bear had an excellent point on the business about not putting competing things on the same ballot, because it's very confusing. The issue with that is you would have to because you consult the clerk. The clerk's in the Caribbean, I think, so you should consult the clerk as to the date. And I think you have to have a meeting, don't you? Have to have a meeting ahead of the town meeting. You have to have another public meeting. So it may be more than 10 days, maybe more like a month might be better. So I think what you should do, if you want to go down that road, and God knows I love a compromise, and I love this approach. Because for me, the process gets cleared up and all my troubles go away. My problem is the process. So this would work for me, and I would recommend to the board, yeah, that's great. But I don't think you should do it right here and now, because the clerk's not here. And she controls the timeline. So I think the best thing that the board could do for these people is they're willing to I don't know, it used to be called a gentleman's agreement. I think it's sexist now, but if you want to do a gentleperson's agreement now, what you could say is that you could make a motion to not put this on the warrant, with the understanding from Mr. Spencer that they would not go to the notary public to go through that process. And in turn, you would give them an unofficial promise that you would look at scheduling a meeting when the clerk got back, so that you could, because there's a lot of law that the clerk has to look at to get the timing. And in this town, we like to let the clerk do that. That's the right person. And besides, the clerk's a great clerk.
James, how about a motion something like, not to put it on the town warrant, but to schedule another special town meeting vote as soon as reasonable can be done. How's that? Something like that.
That would work.
Yeah. So.
All right. I just want to. I know there's people who want to be heard still. I'm going to get to you in just a sec. I just want to clarify what we're on right now, which is so we're good with setting it. We could even. When does Katie get back?
She'll be back the 14th.
What is that?
Monday.
Monday. So let's say not this. We have a meeting every Monday this month, so we won't say this meeting. I'll put it on the agenda for the next meeting, the following meeting, and we'll actually have a date in stone by then, so that way.
I think you get too far down this road. I do think you should hear from your planning board chair.
Yeah, no, I know. Mike's had his hand up for a while, and okay, and then yep.
Just something to consider. Why wouldn't the town hire a planner to help them walk through this process that's a neutral party? Because I think you're hearing stuff from CTR, you're hearing stuff from AWL, and I think you've got to meet somewhere in the middle. And the planning board, I mean, obviously, this isn't an easy process for them either. At least if they had a planner that gave them some guidance, rather than saying, we're going to put this on the ballot in May, or we're going to have a special meeting in the middle of the summer. This is something that takes a couple months to plan out. This isn't something we want to rush through. We want to do it right.
Okay, Mark, and then someone behind you.
Okay, I've heard several times about 400 people approving not vote to approve the CTR recommendations. They voted for the town's planning board to look at the campground standards and make recommendations on changing them. That's what we did through a series of public hearings. Okay, along with that, we've incorporated some of the things they wanted. You see their petition that they have now, they incorporated many things that we recommended that they didn't. And there are other things, such as that we found to be unenforceable that they're recommending. How, you know, unless we have campground police, how, you know, somebody going in, the code enforcement officer going in and checking the number of people staying in a unit every night, things like that. So those were reasons that we rejected a few of those, or like counting the number of pedestrians walking out of the campground. The other concern that was raised was in regards to land use and vernal pools, similar things like that. As I pointed out in several meetings, we do have things in the ordinance to deal with that, okay? Not just in the campground standards themselves, but in the site plan review ordinance. And the other thing that hasn't been mentioned is that the state DEP controls a lot of these things. That's why we require anybody applying for these projects to go get those recommendations or that go ahead from the DEP, etc. That's it.
No, and I want to be very clear.
Also, one more thing. What we're proposing here are the most restrictive campground standards of any town in this area, maybe in the whole entire state, I don't know. So, you know, I understand, maybe they're not getting what they want, but maybe we can't always get what you want. I mean, I'd like to see universal health care, but I'm not getting it.
I want to be very clear too, Mark, from my own point of view, that, you know, I support what you guys have done. You guys have done an awesome job. We're just putting this on behalf of, you know, so people have a chance to vote on it. But, you know, we're not going against the work that you guys have done. I
don't
appreciate
think you
that. The lady in the back in the center, and then David Horner's next there.
I would just like to say that I too think the planning board has done a hell of a job. The fact that I am still concerned about the number of people per unit and that there's no maximum there doesn't mean that I think you haven't, because I think you have done a great job under very difficult circumstances. I like the idea of the compromise because it eliminates the potential confusion, which I think is a legitimate concern. And I also think that your willingness to commit to it tonight, as opposed to putting off that piece of the discussion, is a very wise and fair thing to do. And I would add only one thing, which is in the doing a hell of a job category. Mr. Chairman, you have been wonderful. Through difficult meeting after difficult meeting.
David, you're next.
Jamie, so the town voted to have the plan. They did. They came up with a new version that is a compromise. Done deal. Put that out for the people to vote.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble. I know you can put your mask down just so we can hear. I can't.
The town voted to have the planning board take another look at it.
Mm-hmm.
They did that. They came up with a compromise.
Mm-hmm.
Done deal, as far as I'm concerned. That's the only thing the people of the town should be voting on at this point. So, I mean, if you go with Plan B here, so every time somebody can come up with 160 signatures on a petition, then the town is gonna vote, and then it's somehow gonna be binding, even though, as we've said, it may not even come close to conforming to state law.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. And I ride by these campgrounds every morning. I don't understand what the problem is. They're not offensive, and the state has already set guidelines out there. If these people can meet the guidelines for the state, let it go. I think you're going too far by putting that second, like, by promising them that they might me, up till now, I stayed out of this, but it just seems it's gotten to the point of ridiculous. Now, the planning board has done its job, it's come up with a reasonable compromise that secures for future generations can have a campground if they want, and it's reasonable, and done deal, let it go at that. I don't see where you're under any obligation to immediately put on the ballot, or to have a town warrant for them specifically just because they came up with 160 signatures against it. That's my opinion.
Okay. Greg?
I just want to say one thing. I think that the compromise is part of what everybody wants to get to. I think the board should focus on the idea of compromise, but don't compromise your process. The compromise that reaches what one people want, the other person wants, is a process. So when you think about how you might vote or consider tonight, compromise is good, but compromise an established, lawful process is not. Thank you.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with what David was saying as well, parts of it at least. I understand that it makes you wonder where's the line going to be drawn. Say you want to put up something, David, a business, and 150 people don't like it. They signed a petition, and then it puts a stop on it. I can see this being a domino effect, and that's why I'm all for having the proper processes you follow. We have rules, we have restrictions for reasons, but I do also think that this is very good compromise. I think that if the voters will go, they will vote on what our town committee has brought before us, and then we'll have a special town meeting. People can vote again, and if the majority of voters feel like that they need, one way or the other, that will be determined. So.
Can I just follow up two specific quick questions?
Yeah.
So if 165 or whatever the number they're hailing gets you on a warrant, so what is the minimum number then? Like, so if 35 do you have a
10% of the gubernatorial people who voted in the last gubernatorial election?
84.
84, 85, something like that.
Oh, okay.
That's the number.
Thank you. So that's the specific criteria. But that gives these guys the option or mandates them to do it?
Mandates them to do it unless it's illegal or there's some reason not to. I mean, I've said many times, I'm from Nova Scotia, we think this is all nuts. It's odd rule. But when I moved to Tremont, people told me they had direct democracy with recall, petition, referendum. I thought they were insane. But that's how things are done. And so I'm in favor of the board, and I encourage the board to follow the law. So to answer your question, I really wanted to say, if you want to get something the next week after that, get 85 people, and you can get a meeting going too.
And that's all it would take.
Yeah.
They got to get away with
That's
65, we get 85
That's a
back.
slippery slope.
Yeah.
Okay, so the only other one specific thing I wanted to say is that 20,000 square feet minimum per campsite, that sounds completely ridiculous. Yeah, I mean, so to have 40 campsites, you have to have a 20-acre property, that's ridiculous.
Okay, Mark, and then there was someone up beside you.
Just that gentleman's land use, the state only requires a 1,000 square foot minimum for a campsite. We've been for years at 5,000. In response to the public hearings, which includes some members of CTR, we increased that to 10,000 square feet. They proposed 30,000. We felt that was way too large. I mean, this is a residential business zone. You can have a convenience store, gas station on 1 acre property, essentially, with 25-foot setbacks in that zone. What's going to cause more impact? That or a few campsites on 10,000 square feet? I don't.
Campsite. Yeah.
Very easy. It's a simple one.
Yes.
I was going to just say, Jim Bradford, I actually live here, as opposed to Mr. Johnson, who has been speaking quite a bit. Do you live in this town, sir?
Yeah, matter of fact, I own a house on Kellytown Road. And,
Presently, or?
Yeah, Kellytown Road.
Do you live in this town?
No.
I was asking if you are a resident. I wasn't speaking to you.
No, well, thanks, Brett, I appreciate it.
Hey, hang on just a second.
It's a valid question. I've done something with the town, and the town's engineer for many years. A lot of applicants come before them. That's the involved. And I did own property on Kellytown Road.
But
We live down in Tremont, just over the line. And where do you live?
I live at 234 Black Point Road.
Year round?
Year round.
Do you live in
Yes.
Colorado too?
No,
No property in Colorado.
I have no property in Colorado, no ties to Colorado. I have
No,
an
let's-
ex-wife in Colorado.
Let's,
You and she would get along great.
Hey, Jim, hey, stop right now. I don't wanna hear any more of it back and forth. This is going down the wrong path. You just went after him as to where he lives. We could start pointing the finger all around this room, but we're not gonna.
I think the residents should be speaking.
Yeah,
Jamie, I asked Greg Johnson to come to represent Wisconsin also. so-
yeah, no, I know. We don't need to start pointing the finger at who's a resident, who lives here more, who's lived here longer. We could start that, we don't want to. Please stop that.
That wasn't my point. The point was to explain to the gentleman whose name I don't know back, that David Horner, that the process that we've gone through, which you described as just getting a few signatures together and get anything on the ballot, is in accordance to the town ordinances.
James explained the law on that, so now I understand that, right? So
Wasn't
84
sure.
is the minimum, so anytime we get 84 votes up, we can get another one of these things. These guys allow.
Okay, hey, that's it, last time. Sorry, I don't wanna have to do this, but you're being disrespectful. Everybody has been very good this evening until this.
Mr. Chairman, maybe we should get a motion.
Yes,
How about I make a
no,
motion?
we're down to three now.
Before you take the motion, Mr. Chairman, may I be heard on the proposed compromise?
No, let's just, no, we're done,
There is
Andy.
a
No, no, that's it. Things are going down a wrong path here and I'm done.
I'm all set to make a motion. I'd just like one bit of clarification before I do. I don't know what the time frame for having a vote after a petition's been presented. If what we come up with a date is beyond that, we're not gonna have an issue as long as we schedule it. Is that correct?
That would be correct. There is a
Okay.
deadline in the petition, but the board has the power to put an article on it,
Okay.
meeting whatever you want.
Okay, well,
If you are agreeing with CTR that will allow them to have a vote on their major points, then we'll
okay,
essentially.
I expected that. I just wanted to hear that.
rely on that good faith.
I just wanted to hear that said before I made my motion.
Does that
Okay.
happen after town meeting?
Yes.
I just wanna make sure I understand.
So let's see if I can put together a motion since I'm all over the place here.
And I'm probably not gonna duplicate the motion, because you're gonna,
Okay.
but you wanna entitle, you
Yeah.
wanna bring both of these in so that you can do them as a group, so we don't have to have
Would you
separate
prefer I made a
motions.
motion on both of them together or on each one?
Separately.
Because I have some other comments on the second one.
Okay, so I'll make a motion on the
So
first.
do the first one and then.
Is this
On
the
the
best
first
thing
guy.
for us to do?
Yeah, is this the right thing to do?
Yeah. I think it's the right thing to do for a lot of reasons, sorry, Heather. I think it's a lot of things we do for the right reason. Number one, you don't have the threat hanging over your head of going to a bunch of people and going through the mess of going to the New Republic and going out to another town meeting. That's messy and contentious. So you can avoid that. Number two, I hate the idea of having two things in place at the same time that contradict each other. I think that's a mistake. Number three, I love compromise. And David's got a good point. Well, yeah, anybody can do it. That's direct democracy. That's what's allowed here. So my response to direct democracy is to say, sure, you can do it, you can petition, but follow the right procedure.
Okay, you're done. I'm gonna make a motion.
Okay, go ahead. The short answer is yes.
I move to not place citizens petition, I guess number one for lack of a better definition, on the town warrant, but to hold a special town meeting vote at the earliest convenient time following the town meeting.
If you could just add, as determined by the clerk.
As determined by the town clerk.
And
Bottom line is it will be scheduled, we're not sure of the date yet.
And I've already given my word too, I wanna make sure that it will be placed on not this meeting, but the next meeting. So it's not gonna get a month and a half down the line, like it's gonna be.
It'll be on the agenda for the meeting in 2
Yeah.
weeks. Okay.
If you want that in there. I know
Okay.
we're trying to get everything into one motion.
Do you want me to restate it, or is that clean enough?
That's clean enough for
Okay.
me.
Okay.
I think once you have the second on that, and then in the discussion report, I'd like to hear from Dick his verbal promise not to go to a notary public.
Okay.
James, are we legally bound to approve that? To put these petitions onto, or, you know, up for
The next
another
time, no.
meeting?
No, but you said you would, so you should.
I didn't say that.
Right, if you vote on it, then I think you should. But at any meeting, you can always reconsider at the next meeting. I mean, this is very in the weeds, but you can always vote yes on one thing and turn around the next meeting, reconsider and vote no. So are you legally bound? No. Morally, should you? Yeah. The reason it's a sticky answer because stuff comes up, right?
Yes, stuff has been coming up. And
It has
I
been
feel
coming
that
up.
we've
Stuff's
done
wrong.
the process. That's
We
my
should
problem
stick to
with
it.
this.
I don't think we should consider, I think we should just let the plan board do their job and forget about the rest of it. That's my opinion.
Well, you got a motion, get a second, and then have that discussion.
Okay.
So I think you should get a second.
Do we have a second? I'll second it. I will. So it's been moved and seconded. Kevin, just breathe. You're gonna have to go with it again because I don't.
Not recommend to put the citizens petition number 1 on the town warrant for the town meeting on May 9th, I think the vote is. And to agree to schedule a meeting at the town clerk's nearest convenience to have this petition voted on then at a special election.
Okay.
Now it's
All right.
a discussion. Of
Any discussion? No.
I just think we should let the plan board do the ordinances and not even bother with us. Not
Yeah.
even compromise.
And I agree with you, Howdy. I agree that that we need to follow our planning board, but I think this is a compromise. And if people vote, you know, the vote is gonna tell, you know, after.
We've already
it's just-
voted for the planning board.
Yeah,
Okay, let's vote.
yeah, okay. All right, no more discussion.
Yeah, do you want to have the verbal promise from Dick?
Oh, yes,
that,
no,
not
that
to
would
go
be-
to notary public?
Yep.
If the board approves this motion and agrees to put it on a subsequent meeting, we will go to the notary public.
Okay. Okay, that being on record. All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, 2, 3.
So I think it's appropriate now to get a motion to, one of these people on this end, I think, who voted against that, to make a motion to say, you just don't want it on there,
Okay.
if that's how you feel.
I'll make a motion to not put it on the town warrant at all. I think I've said it all night long, we should support our planning board, and I just feel like this is a slippery slope, and I'm not comfortable with it.
So, I just want to criticize the last part of that motion. Mr. Spencer was 50% right, in my opinion. You don't have to do anything. You're not slaves, so you don't have to do anything. You're not required. You are obligated by law to put it on unless it's unreasonable. So I think in your motion, it should say some reason that you don't want to do it. So Mr. Hamilton is chirping from the peanut gallery. He thinks it's illegal. I like the word unreasonable because there's 2 competing ordinances. Causes confusion.
Okay. Causes confusion and unreasonable.
Okay.
So the first part of your motion then, because it's unreasonable and causes confusion,
Should we take, drop this vote and then start, like, should we
start
vote? No.
afresh with the first part of our motion.
Okay.
And then
Well, it's already been moved and seconded, so let's take a
sorry.
vote.
Sorry,
Okay. What's that?
moved and seconded?
Yeah, it was already,
Howdy
yeah,
seconded it.
Howdy seconded it already.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just
Yeah.
rescind your motion. and
So-
rescind-
Should probably rescind that one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, I take it back. I rescind my motion.
Right.
I just want to make sure we were clear that it had been seconded. Okay, good.
So now if you want to say that again, move to not place it on the warrant because it is unreasonable and would cause confusion.
Okay, what he said, yep.
Okay.
That.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
I could just.
Oh.
So this is just not to put it on the warrant. This has no effect, just to be 100% clear about whether it should be voted on in the future or not. This is just
That's
whether or
right.
not to include
And
it
what probably
on
is
the
going to
town
happen is
warrant.
Mr. Spencer and his cadre, they're going to go off to some notary and try to get a second meeting. And in the meantime, at some point.
But I just want to clarify what we're voting on. I don't
call-
even want to do any more of that.
Right?
So we're voting on not
Not
putting it
putting it
on
on the
this warrant, which we all had agreed on anyway. It would be on, okay. All right, is there any discussion? All those in favor? Okay. All right, I know these have kind of merged themselves together here, but we have the second citizens petition. To amend Article 1, Section C, Paragraph 2 of the Tremont Land Use Ordinance.
So that one, if I may, Mr. Chairman, that one, everybody sort of talked about it on the first one. The additional thing I wanted to add there was that this one here, I think is, I apologize to the board for not being smart enough to understand it. But I don't understand it. And one of the reasons that you could turn something down was unintelligible. Another reason is illegal. I don't know if it's either one, but I'm afraid that it could capture the AWL 1 and 2 matters and somehow get in and do that. What I wanted to say is that effectiveness of an ordinance is an incredibly complex thing. Usually pass an ordinance and 30 days later it's effective. It's simple, right? Try to keep that simple. In my mind, when I read this, and I've read it 30 times, I keep reading it, and I'm unconvinced that it does not capture a bunch of stuff that could be pending, particularly the AWL stuff. And I just think it's a bad idea to adopt ordinances about effective dates at all. I think you already have something in your ordinance that says these shall be effective 30 days after. That's good enough. This just sows confusion and problems. So I can't say it's illegal. Possibly illegal, the best I can do for you.
So this, if this gets approved and voted in, and the changes that we recommended for the zone, the land use ordinance, this will affect the changes that were on this document also, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
and so what could happen, and this is what I'm really worried about, is that, let's say the appeal number, we call it AWL number 2, that's currently before Ms. Harris and the Board of Appeals. Let's say that gets denied, and the thing is there. But there are a number of conditions in that. It's a complicated approval. One of the ones is the boundary line has to be delineated and goes to code enforcement. There's another one, I think, with water. Okay, let's say that while that's going on, there's a claim that's by this group is probably saying that the changes voted in on May 10th have to apply to that. Would they? Well, I don't know. And I do know that you can't make a law after somebody's got something for 45 days. You can't go back and change it on it. And that's what I'm worried about. And more importantly, I guess, is I'm just worried that I can't understand what the law is. I keep looking at it going, that's not clear. So why, I don't wanna recommend something to you that's not clear in my mind. It should be clear. It's not.
Okay.
He's the attorney.
Well, do you guys understand it? I don't.
Well, obviously I had questions earlier.
Yeah, I don't understand it. I keep reading it. Yeah, I also, there's another thing which I think might be illegal, but I'm not sure about. I haven't had time to look at this, but you see the provision that says recreational lodging facilities. There are no recreational lodging facilities in Tremont. That's a term that might happen in the future. That's not a term that exists now. Now I think they call them RVs, campgrounds, cabins, they call them a bunch of other stuff. So I was having difficulty getting my mind around legislating for something in the future that doesn't exist now. So if I said you're gonna legislate about giraffes, well, you'd say there's no giraffes on the ordinance. Oh, we're gonna call campgrounds giraffes later on. But they're not called that now. So how can you put a vote on something where it's not done? So for example, you would have this provision and it would be meaningless because it would say that this applies to recreational lodging facilities. Well, if you vote down the other thing and don't vote that in, what the hell does this mean? It just applies to nothing. So I think this is unlawful because it's a potential nullity. And I don't think you should put the potential nullities before the people. That's a real technical idea.
And I'll make a motion not to place, what are we at, petition number 2, on the town warrant for the reasons James just said.
How about just?
It's unclear and unlawful. Unclear and unlawful.
Second. Hang on a second. I just want to try to get it right. It's been moved and seconded to not place petition 2 on the for town vote because it's unclear and unlawful. Correct? Okay. All right. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? All right.
Mr. Chairman, can I go home now?
Yes, you can go home now. Thank you, James.
Thanks, James.
You're welcome.
I just gotta resort my stuff here. Hang on a second. Okay. All right. Next, we have the comprehensive plan update. Mr. Jesse, you want me to refer to? Well, that's all right. You get it. Yeah.
So, as detailed in my memo, at your January 18th meeting, you unanimously voted to terminate the contract with Hancock County Planning Commission for the work they were doing updating the comprehensive plan. I've reached out to the Musson Group who had submitted a proposal in 2020 when you requested bids for the comprehensive plan update. At that time, you received one from the Musson Group and the Hancock County Planning Commission. And at that time, you ultimately went with the Hancock County Planning Commission, which did not work out. In your packets is a proposal from North Star Planning in partnership with the Musson Group. Noel couldn't be here tonight due to a family issue. It's my understanding that the original proposal was the Musson Group in partnership with North Star, and due to Noel's schedule, it's kind of flip-flopped this time to the North Star Planning in partnership with the Musson Group. You will see they're proposing a project team of 5 planners, 3 from North Star and 2 from the Musson Group. And the schedule and cost is on the
can I get in here before I leave, Mr. Chairman, and just say, I looked over that memo from town manager and said, I think that it's perfectly appropriate for the board to skip the bidding process when you've already discussed it with Noel. I think that's very appropriate. You can decide to go that way.
Thanks, James.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Yeah,
James.
thank you.
You will see that the schedule has obviously delayed the completion of the process until September of 2023. I believe the original completion was April of 2023. Those are fairly recommended timeframes in my discussions with Noel and Dan Smith from North Star. They felt it was obviously reasonable to not be finished on your original timeframe of April 2023 due to the delay. You can see the expected cost is $66,940. The original estimate from Musson Group in 2020 was a range, I believe, of 55 to 70. And for reference, if it helps in your decision, I have, if you noticed, I have put it in the budget for FY23 as far as funding. For FY22, I calculate that if you went with this proposal, you'd be somewhere in the range of $14,000 to pay for that work, and we currently have around $9,000 left over from the budget for the HCPC. So you will go over a tad for FY22 in that category. Other than that, if you have any questions for me on it, they are prepared to, I believe, last I checked with them, they were prepared to restart with the March comp plan task force meeting.
Yeah, I think we've tried it, and we talked with them originally. I don't have any problem waiving the purchase policy. I mean, we put it out for RFP or bid before anyway, and he was the only other player that showed up, so
Yeah.
I think a bid process is gonna be a total waste of time and delay it further, so. I make a motion to waive the purchasing policy and approve the comprehensive plan update proposal from North Star Planning in partnership with the Musson Group.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to waive the purchasing policy and to approve the comprehensive plan update proposal from North Star Planning in partnership with the Musson Group. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? All right, LY management. We're here again this year. Oh, sorry, the budget. I didn't even see that, Jesse.
I thought you were doing that.
I didn't even. Yeah, I didn't even want the budget. I want to make it home before midnight. No, sorry, budget. That's you, Jesse.
Let's do it next week. No.
Yeah.
Can
Okay.
I say something before we leave?
Yes.
Fred's not here, but I want to thank you guys for approving Dole. I think that's a wise decision. He's going to really help move things along.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good.
Yay.
So, tonight is my presentation, general review of significant changes in the budget. And then from my understanding and participating last year, you guys digest it and discuss it again next week, and potentially the week after that. In your packet, there is a handout 6G with budget changes that exceed $5,000 over last year's, either an increase or a decrease. And before I forget, because it's not on any of the documents, one of the last items that I edited in the budget was fuel, and that may be something we need to edit again before you approve.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Pretty much changing daily, so our typical calculation and formulas that the town has used for projecting the next year's may not be sufficient to cover what that actually would be. But if you want to start with the changes,
I mean,
We're,
sorry, go ahead, Jesse.
go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I think the fuel tank, I mean, obviously, who is even gonna put a bid down right now to lock in? I mean, I don't even know if anybody will this summer at the way everything's going. I mean, I would budget for a lot more than you might think.
The typical formula calculated a 15% increase. I did a quick just search the other day, and they're currently 58% higher than this time last year, which is significantly different than 15.
Yeah.
You could reach out, ask my mother what she's doing for the schools for hers at the superintendent's office, because I think that it's probably going to be in the, I mean, I hate to say it, but I bet you it's going to be 3+.
100%.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, it's gonna be over 100%. Right?
Yeah, no, I think right now it's 244.
244.
Yeah, I bet you'll be 350. You know,
or if not more. Yeah.
If you budget 350 or 375, then at least you'll go down. But I think we'll be lucky to get it for that. At this point.
So scary.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's
already up 50%, right?
Yeah.
So
it's
definitely.
What is gas? 410, 412 down there, something like that.
Keystone Pipeline.
Revenues changes. Motor vehicle excise tax is currently trending down. That's a statewide trend. All the towns, other than managers listserv, have been discussing a decrease in their request due to the trend down. A lot of the increase in FY 20 and 21 was due to delayed registrations due to the pandemic, as well as delayed purchases due to the pandemic.
That might change if they get chips for cars that are sitting on lots of them.
Yes.
So,
Taking up
that
more
might come
gas,
back.
though, so.
Yeah.
Homestead reimbursement, that's just a calculation based on what we're expecting year to year. Use of unallocated fund balance. This year, you originally budgeted in FY 22 $122,000, and then we encumbered some that brings you up to that 254, 529. You can see for FY 22. Right now, I have in the budget $105,000. The use of the unallocated fund balance is it's a good way to raise or lower the taxes. So currently, I should highlight, if you haven't read it, the municipal budget itself for is up 1%, and the total budget, including municipal, school, high school, and county, is currently up 3.6%.
That's with the high school being the 10% or whatever it was.
Yep.
So
That's
that's what brings it up. is the high
That's
school.
what the county's increased to?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So 3.6, the cost of living adjustment is 5.9, so it is under that. That's the cost of living IRS went with for 2022. I have increased the salaries for the employees by that 5.9. That's typically what the town does, is the cost of living increase for all of them. So that is 5.9, that's in there, and it also is pretty much preset to increase all the general expenses. There's not a set increase, everything increases by 5.9. So even with that, again, municipal is currently looking at a 1% increase or $12,913. I believe that comes out to $8.33 per month as an increase. It's an increase of $100 on a home assessment $250,000. Municipal budget expenditures, changes of 5,000 or more. I'll run through those. Office part-time help. That was the deputy clerk hours were increased from 16 to 24 in FY 22. That was after we did not hire a full-time code officer officer slash deputy clerk. We increased deputy clerk's time. CEO wages, last year, the budget again had a full-time CEO. This budget is a 2-day-a-week CEO with the hope that John adds that second day. But that's why you see that decrease there. Same for the decrease in health insurance was for the last year budgeting of another full-time, and this year is not. Workers' compensation was a decrease due to, as we move away from the claim that we had in 2019, those annual rates are starting to drop again. Contract for police is the hourly rate increase per the contract for 2022 and 2023.
How many hours are we getting police?
40, right?
We have budgeted and contracted for 45. That
We
was
haven't
changed, but we haven't reached the 45. It's a lot of weeks are still 30. It has increased here and there, but it's all dependent on their staff. There's definitely more 30 hours than 45.
40.
And there hasn't been, I mean, that's what we were before, right? The 30.
Yeah, town meeting.
We're paying them another $50,000 a year, isn't that what it is?
They only bill us hourly, so if they're only doing the 30, then we're just paying for the 30.
So we're not just, oh, okay, it's not
Yeah.
a locked in. Okay.
Right. No, we just have it available if they do
Gotcha.
work 45.
Hopefully in the summer when it's more busy around here, hopefully they can actually get some people here a little bit more often when we need it.
When they do,
It looks like they're hiring too. Like
Yeah,
we've
that's
seen
been
a lot of
advertising for
Yeah,
more
so
deputies,
maybe-
so.
The public works building repairs and maintenance, that decrease is due to last year's budget, including 30,000 for the pole barn that we're working on. The paving, also that decrease of 40 is due to last year budgeting for the paving that was completed this year, and the remaining to be completed you encumbered to FY22, so there's no expense in FY23 for that. Cemeteries contracted services, I've put in the budget looking again at contracting out the mowing of the cemeteries for FY23 due to the amount of hours that is taking public works. I had Troy give me a calculation, and this past summer it took them approximately 39 hours a week to get the cemeteries done between the two of them. So we did have, it was a wet summer, so it grew a lot. But we did, midway through the summer, have to make the decision of whether or not to focus on roads or cemeteries, and we did roads, so we did, handle a couple calls of these cemeteries haven't been trimmed and mowed. So it is quite a lot, even with the two of them. I did reach out to some other municipalities, their contracts for cemetery mowing, roughly the same size, 12 cemeteries, ranged from $35,000 to $49,000 for the year. I've put the lower 35 in the budget for FY23.
Jesse, we have all the equipment, obviously. What would it look like if we hired another public works guy to take
Just for
on
mowing?
that job,
As a part-time,
as full-time?
as a full-time, well,
Full-time.
Seasonal or
Yeah,
year-round?
I guess it
Full-time
would be
seasonal.
seasonal, probably, yeah.
Or even if you, because I know we looked at this before, Eric, this was a while ago. We put lawn mowing out to bid, and I can't remember what happened. Kevin, you might remember. You remember there was some conflict on how the bid was.
From what I've been told, one bid under one expectation and one bid under the other.
A seasonal price and then per mowing
Right.
price or something.
And so then they felt they weren't bidding the same things, and at that point, I'm not sure what happened.
And then I think that we looked at the numbers of hiring the additional person, and I believe if this would have been like Dana's time, I think, I believe that we said the same thing, that, or I think I voted for it to have what it would cost to have all this lawn mowing done was not far off from having a full-time employee. But I think the issue was we were trying to get one, and we had trouble
that's the
finding
problem,
someone to fill it. This was a while back, but I believe that's what it was.
I don't think it's gotten any better.
Yeah.
So FY 21, I believe, because it was fall of 2020, when we hired David, the town was hiring for 2 full-time year-round
Yeah.
at that time.
There you go, yeah.
And it took, I believe it took from May to November to get
Mhm.
David hired due to lack of.
Yeah.
And then it tends to get kind of controversial because a lot of the people that are applying for public works jobs are working for local contractors. It's the same people that apply for the jobs, and that doesn't make a lot of good feelings either.
Yeah,
So
Yeah.
it's been a bit of an issue trying to fill another position.
And I can see it definitely being hard to fill a
Yeah.
part-time seasonal
Yeah.
position.
Well, this was a full-time, year-round,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
additional person, we couldn't do it, and that just rang a bell with me, that's why I thought that we've been through this before, and this time, I would agree with contracting the mowing for now, cause I think then that's their responsibility, their headache, they just mow it, we pay them, and that's it, you find your staff, and then, you know, see if it starts to get more expensive as time goes on, then, or if we have the opportunity to hire someone, then.
If we get another employee, it'd be different.
Yeah, and that's something that we could do too, is have an open job bid for an employee, and whenever they come around, it'd have to be a full-time position. They just have to fit into the rest of the rotation, but, you know, that might, if that does for next year, you know, if we hired someone this year, maybe that would, but I don't know, does that full-time employee end up costing more than the contracted mowing, you know?
Oh, yeah, it's gonna be more, but it's just how much more. I mean, I think between that and they were figuring like snow plowing in the winter, the part-time, it would offset itself, so it wasn't much money. You know, if you had them plowing in the winter, mowing in the summer, you know, and doing everything in between.
Yeah.
But it's just finding them.
Yeah, exactly. Someone that wants to make a career out of it or whatever. So.
And while we're talking about that for a second, those guys have kept these roads unbelievable. Like, I know we've said it a few times, but this winter has been, I mean,
they've done a really good
I've
job.
traveled a lot more this winter with Gavin's basketball stuff, and you go all over the place, and these roads have been the best by far, and I mean, they have done a phenomenal job.
Yes.
I'd agree with that.
They have.
Yeah. For reference, a full-time, year-round laborer would be at least 42,000 plus health insurance and workers' comp.
So it puts it at like 50
So
or
it'd
something.
probably be around 60.
Is that kind of accounting for raised wages that have gone up recently too?
No.
Okay, so it's probably gonna be more than that to get someone to walk in the door.
Say 65,
Yeah.
roughly, you know,
Most
all
likely
in.
after the
Yeah.
benefits.
Yeah.
65, 70.
And then if you had, if it cost you 35 to have your mowing done, you've got 30, but then if you start chipping away at the snow plowing, taking people off that, I can see where Eric's got a valid point. It would probably come out to being very close, but if you find them, Eric, we'll hire them.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
I can't even find someone to hire.
Yeah, I know.
None of us can.
Dix Point Road, last year, this is a transfer into the reserve and then essentially out as well. We currently have $140,000 that was in FY 22's budget for the Dix Point Road reconstruction. The $50,000 right now is just purely a placeholder guess at this point. I'm waiting for a potential estimate from the engineer on this is what you can do for 140, this is what you want to do is going to cost. I haven't received that yet. It will be more than 140 to do what we plan to do. I did get good news today in my email that the stream crossing grant that I applied for, we have been tentatively awarded $42,500 for that on Dix Point Road.
Nice job.
But by the way, while we're talking about that, I had someone mention to me that that's a real potential flooding area. Sea level rise goes up, so I'm hoping when we would do that culvert replacement, that's the grade increases.
Yep. Part of their consideration for the grant is that it is in a flood area.
Okay,
That
good.
that section of basically Dix Point would be cut off as it has no other alternative means of entrance there.
I've never seen the water even
close to the top of that road as it is now.
No.
I mean, it's, feet below.
Yeah.
At the highest tides.
The planning board budget, as you can see, as I mentioned earlier, has the contract work for the comprehensive plan. It's showing an increase of $30,990 over last year's, or this year's budget. My calculation, I'm estimating that the FY23 portion of that contract would be around $45,000. EMR fees, this is just a formula that the budget projects the calculation based on the past years and this year's usage. Trash volume is increasing along with the cost per ton, so that is the reason for both EMR and the tipping fees to MRC increasing. Recycling, these numbers are basically worst case scenario, I guess you could call it, for expense wise, as we don't know until we get several months in on the recycling. So the 8,300 is essentially what I'm expecting for the 6 months of 2022, FY 2022, if it was at full capacity recycling what was in the contract, which I don't anticipate we will, but I put that in the budget as we won't know. So then next year's estimate is doubling that for the full 12 months based on that.
Jesse, back to the planning board for a second. You're not figuring any legal fees under that planning board budget. That's a different budget item?
Correct.
Okay. That's what I thought. I just wanted
And under reserves, transfer to town equipment reserve, I'm recommending 10,000. That is the reserve that we used to purchase the Bobcat this year. Just pull up
How was the Bobcat with just the bucket on the front or the plow, whatever they had going?
Right now they just have the bucket. It definitely, the first storm that it was here was the 2 feet storm. So then it ended up with about 4 feet on the sidewalk on the plow. So that was a lot. The second storm was the ice storm, so it was frozen solid at the end of it. The next snowstorm, I had David go out during the snowstorm. He did not go in the truck, he went out in the Wildcat and cleared, and that worked very well. I think the more snow there is, the bucket isn't the best option,
Yeah.
but for now, the blade still hasn't arrived. We didn't purchase the blade.
If you can just get the blade here, that'll make
Yeah.
a world of difference. They can
Yeah.
keep up with it just like anything else. You just scrape it back and forth.
Don't
And
have
we'll,
to keep dumping it.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that will.
I'm anticipating the balance at the end of FY22 in that account to be $12,493, and so I'm projecting putting another 10 in, and then looking at getting bids for sweeper and snow blower. I know Public Works' main preference is the sweeper, but looking at both of those. The next 2 reserves on the list, I'm recommending you establish 2 new reserves. The first is for the town office building. Much like you have a reserve for the community building and Pacific Hall, I think it's wise to have a reserve for the town office building as it ages. There are 2 projects that we've kind of talked about for FY23, and I had originally thought of trying to just put those projects in the budget, for the town office building as expenditures. But due to the fact, that we may be able to get a grant for one of them, I thought if we just went with the reserve, which I think is a good idea in general, then we would be able to get bids for those two projects and hopefully not use that full amount. So I'm recommending 50,000. The two projects, one is the whole floor in the upper level is in pretty severe need of replacement.
Which part of the floor, Jesse? Because that was all done a couple of years ago, wasn't it? In the lobby area?
It was buffed, and there was an area replaced by the windows. Where the
Okay, I guess they didn't replace all of it then.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
No. So the tiles are showing their age down here. They're pretty good.
Upstairs they're peeling.
Yeah, I guess I haven't noticed.
Yeah, they're
Yeah, no,
popping
they're
and
spacing
peeling
and they're
Yeah.
peeling and
Okay.
yeah, lifting.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the other project we had looked at, which has been considered for a couple of years, I know Chris was looking at it, was heat pump options
Yeah.
for the building, mainly for cooling in the summer. It's
Yeah.
pretty hot, and the residents often mention the heat out front in the lobby as well.
Better make sure you get them solar panels working first.
Yeah.
That electric bill will be right through the roof.
Yeah. Yeah.
Trying to expand it here.
Yeah.
Make that happen.
Yeah. Apparently we do have an issue with them, which hopefully was repaired today. But
Yeah, I saw him there today.
yeah, I'll have to
did.
talk to you about it.
Okay.
Second is a transfer into a revaluation reserve. At the October 18th meeting, you approved a reval contract, for a townwide revaluation with RJD. That is around $86,000. There is nothing, I went over it with the assessor, there's nothing due during FY23, but I would recommend to soften the expense of FY24 to set money aside in a reserve for that this budget. Right now I'm recommending 20,000 be placed in that. The transfer out to the road improvement program is the one we just discussed. It's the opposite end of it, 50 in, 50 out for the Dix Point Road. The wharf trash disposal. At the Harbor Committee's last meeting, at the end of February when we went over the budget, they recommend, and I agree, with removing the roll-off container at the wharf. That was placed there when we started sending trash to Fiberite, as the rope and things from the wharf can't go to Fiberite. So the roll-off was placed there to transport them to Kirk instead, and that is based on tonnage compared to the regular dumpsters at the wharf. It's now my understanding with Fiberite closed that there's no need to separate them at this point. They're all going to the same place. We're just paying tonnage for what's in the roll-off and not what's in the dumpster. It's increased significantly this year, so much that we are currently budgeted for FY22 at $74.51, and it was projecting based on usage that next year would be $12,000. We're estimated this year is going to come in at $11,000. So the Harbor Committee was in favor of eliminating the roll-off and adding an additional dumpster to avoid the dumpster being full. They would like to not have fishermen have issues with not having a place if it fills up. So with the addition of the second dumpster, that additional cost is much less than the roll-off. So it's showing a decrease of $5,000, which, as their wharf budget is fairly tight from only utilizing more funds, the $5,000 is a pretty good savings for that fund. And that relates to the transfer from wharf fund to capital, wharf capital of $5,000 other reserve account expenditures, the purchase of a new town plow truck. As you know, both truck 1 and truck 2 are the same year. They're purchased at the same time. Both are pretty much on a course for needing replacement at the same time. But due to the costs, we are hoping to replace truck 1 and then save up for truck 2. There's currently expected to be a balance of $167,000 at the end of FY22 in the town truck reserve. I have budgeted for an additional 65, which is what you budgeted in FY22, and anticipating that the truck will cost $190,000. The last estimate was 165-ish 2 years ago.
Yeah. Can you imagine? $200,000 for a plow truck. I know, I'm sure it will be.
And then this last item is again the Dix Point Road. Other than that, everything else is
Yeah, the only thing I can think of off the top of my head is just fuel, and I don't wanna put a number on it. You'll just have to see what everybody else is doing, but I would like completely go over on it, cause, I mean, I don't know even what.
It may not by the time we need it.
Yeah, no, I know, you don't know, but I would prepare for
Yeah.
whatever you get to, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, another argument for the heat pump.
So, I'm obviously fairly new to all this budget stuff. What's the average increase per year for the town's budget?
I think it's been running somewhere close to 3%.
Yeah,
Yeah,
three,
overall.
it's usually three.
Yeah, 3,
3
1.
to 5,
Yeah.
5 to high end.
So we're right in there. We're
Yeah.
on the lower
Yeah.
end.
Yeah, last year's municipal was a 1.3%.
Yeah, because obviously there's always going to be an increase.
Yeah.
You know, you
Well,
can't.
Cost of living, they calculated at 5.9.
Right.
So we're at 3.6, so we're well below that anyway.
So that's good.
Yeah.
No, a 1% increase on the, because the school kind of, I've learned as I've been here that I used to think we try to do the 3 point, you can't really go off the 3.6. You have to go off from ours, which is the 1%,
Yeah.
and then add on there, or 2 point, whatever it
Well,
is, yeah.
that's the part we have control of.
Yeah, no, I know.
Worst part, people see the 3.6 at home.
Yeah, no, yeah,
So,
exactly.
right, so typically it looks like in the past, the municipal side only, we tend to try and keep it cost of living, but cost of living has always been under 3. So last year's municipal was 1.3, which was cost of living last year. So if we did that this year, then the municipal only would be 5.9.
Yeah.
I don't see, in working on the budget, obviously gas is gonna increase us somewhere above the 1. But I didn't see any justification to make the municipal 5.9 at this point in time.
I think it's really good not to, if we can.
Yeah, same. We kind of hope so. Yeah.
And the only thing I have a question on is how we could start to, if we want to use a little bit of the funds that we've stored away. I mean, we've done super good about bringing the fund balance up to 15%, and I mean it was like 2% 6 years ago. So I mean that's awesome.
So,
but
right.
if I don't know if I would use it to reduce taxes yet. Maybe we'll have to sometime. But if we went after some things that need to be fixed, such as floors, and can we take out of that to do?
So essentially, because the unallocated fund balance technically goes into the budget as a revenue, it technically is offsetting those reserves. So 105 of unallocated you could look at as 65 for the truck reserve and 40
Okay.
for the, towards the town office reserve.
Mhm.
So if you wanted to increase, you know, if you wanted another 50 in this reserve, then you could increase that and then increase your unallocated by 50. Any increase to the unallocated is going to reduce the budget. But if you're putting it over here, it's gonna.
So I don't wanna, I'm not clear still on, so if, like, I know it's just over $1 million we have in our,
Yes.
yeah. So if we wanna take 100,000 out of that, let's just be round and say, we wanna take 100,000 out and do, I don't know, all new floors and all new this and that would then not come out of, or not be added to our budget this year.
It would it would offset it in the revenues, cause you're gonna transfer
Yeah.
in.
Okay, I guess that's what I'm proposing, is taking some of that out of, and using it for capital improvements instead of, and I don't wanna bring it down much, but just a little, to, maybe that would help offset some of the increase too in the taxes.
Let's see if I can.
I didn't see the audit, it's actually this one right there.
It was like 1.34. Oh, you weren't, okay. Yeah, it's 15% now, so it's gone from,
Yeah.
14.9%. And I remember when I said it was like, what, 2.2
Yeah, it was like
or
2 or
2.1 or?
Yeah, it's 15.9.
Yeah.
So it's currently $1,034,573, and the projected balance should be between 677 and 812.
Yep.
I'm gonna wade through that, I'm trying to find it.
So I guess,
$250,000 over the
Yeah.
projected balance, but that doesn't mean
but I wouldn't,
spend that.
yeah, I wouldn't go taking out of that. All I mean is just little things that I would feel comfortable doing would be like improvements, if you use it for improvements to things, not go spend it, all pile, but whatever you think like I can just think the town office for that, the heat pumps for the town office, if that comes to 50,000, then take the 50 out and that will just be that much less we have to throw in on taxes.
Yep.
Just a thought.
Well, there was $100 that wouldn't come out of everyone's pocket on a $250,000 bill.
Yep. It's something,
That makes
yeah.
sense.
Yeah, something to think about.
And it's not much really to take out of the, the
No,
balance.
you get $1 million bucks.
Yep. And I know Jim was very happy about how it's grown, when he,
Oh, yeah.
cause you weren't here I forgot.
Yeah,
you
I
were here
was
for
on Zoom.
Oh, that's right, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
never mind.
Other than that, if you want to, typically we go over any changes at next week's meeting. If you wanna make a motion for what changes you'd like, from this initial review. I don't think I need a motion on the fuel.
No. We wouldn't even know where to direct it.
Do you want one for taking 50,000 out, maybe putting it into the, was it town office reserve or? I can't
Yeah,
remember.
if you wanna, so right now the budget has 105 from unallocated, so if you wanna increase that.
How much are you
155?
budgeting to spend on the town office?
I think it was 50,000.
50,000.
50. You think that'll cover it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So we'll just take 50 out of the increase in the allocated fund balance
Increase
and
it to 155.
let it go that way? Okay. Yeah, I'm thinking backwards. I'm
I know.
thinking I'm thinking taking it out, but okay.
I make a motion to have Jesse increase the unallocated fund balance to 155,000 for fiscal year 23 budget.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to direct town manager to increase the unaccounted fund balance to $155,000.
Been a long meeting.
Yeah, no, I know. I can't, after you struggle with that. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Oh, hell yeah.
You must have set the pace and I
guess
just
so.
fell right into it. Yeah.
Good job, Jesse.
Yes.
Alright.
No, it looks good. I mean, to have a 1% increase, I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it looks good to me.
Yeah. And if we-
Otherwise,
Yeah, L-wise. Same thing.
story every year.
Yeah.
Alright.
Eric, you wanna go get some L-wise?
I do actually, yeah.
You got it?
Same. Okay, I'll make a motion to direct the town manager to advise the Maine Department of Marine Resources that the Tremont Board of Selectmen have voted that for calendar year 2022, Seal Cove Brook shall be closed to recreational fishing for river herring, and that the town will not lease its river herring rights.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to direct the town manager to advise the Maine DMR that the Tremont Board of Selectmen have voted that for calendar year 2022, Seal Cove Brook shall be closed to recreational fishing for river herring, and that the town will not lease its river herring rights. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? All right, local liquor auction.
So, as detailed in my memo, we received notice back before Chris left in April of 2021 that the state apparently missed the fact that 270 or so towns voted in the 60s and 70s not to allow the sale of liquor at establishments such as Hampton's on Sundays. Tremont was one of those municipalities who voted not to allow the sale of it on Sundays in 1974. So the state at some point after that ignored that fact and started issuing licenses. So their license they issued to Hanson's currently allows them to sell liquor on Sundays. So the correction the state needs is they need all those towns to vote again whether or not they want the sale of liquor on Sundays for off-premises consumption. And it has to be placed on referendum secret ballot for July of this year.
Make a motion to request the town manager to place the local liquor option on the warrant for town meeting by referendum.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to request the town manager to place the local liquor option on the warrant for town meeting by referendum. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? All right, Jesse, town manager's report.
There's some more?
I'll go quick.
Can you go fast, yeah.
Major emphasis in the last 2 weeks has been wrapping up the FY23 budget work. I've worked on meeting preparations, ordered salt, attended a training on browntail moths, proposal review from North Star Planning, planning board meeting prep and attendance, harbor committee meeting attendance, attended MMA training for online classes, a new portal they have, ordered new ceiling tiles for the meeting room, had conducted the February 28th special select board meeting. I had some phone calls with Versant and Sundog Solar about a solar issue with the array, and worked on updating the ordinances from the planning board meeting. Office staff assisted with budget preparations, binder preparations, receiving and certifying petitions, and working on warrant and ballot and annual town report work. Public Works was busy with road treatments, plowing, sanding, sander repair on truck 3, maintenance on the case, changing plow steel on truck 3, started a repair on the John Deere and coordinated the salt deliveries. Harbor Master conducted the harbor committee meeting. Welded the pin on truck 2, puts Tremont stickers on the Bobcat, was busy with plowing and sanding, and the John Deere repair, and attended 3 days of Harbor Master training at MMA. Over the next few weeks, I'm hoping to work on ballot and warrant preparations, coordinating the restart of the comp plan meeting, and assisting the Board of Appeals with their upcoming meeting.
Is that?
That's it.
That was quick. I'm waiting for the
It's only been a week.
Yeah, I know. Thank you, Jesse. Okay, date of the next meeting.
Make a motion to confirm the date of the next meeting for Monday, March 14th, 2022 at 5 o'clock PM right here.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to confirm the date of the next meeting for Monday, March 14th, 2022, 5 PM at the town office. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
I'm gonna walk off with the public's copy here.
Did I run out of yours?
If there's one up there, that's fine, just, I can pick it up later. Just remind me. Sounds like I'm gonna be talking to you about solar anyway.
Yeah.
Hey, it's a few minutes before 8 o'clock. Still got